The big story this week is the war with Iran that began 47 years ago, but which has now reached a culmination. This started last Saturday morning when Israeli warplanes launched a surprise attack on the compound in Tehran where Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei was holding a meeting with his senior henchmen. The Israeli strike was successful in eliminating Khamenei and at least 40 other regime officials, but there are surviving members of the regime who have vowed to continue fighting. All week they launched attacks on Israel, as well as several other countries in the region, who tried very hard to stay out of this fight. Meanwhile, the American military is pounding Iranian targets as well. All that and much more is just ahead on VFI News from Israel. Welcome, friends. My name is Barry Segal, and this is the VFI News. Before we dive into this week's report, I have to apologize to someone, and that would be White House Special Envoy Steve Witkoff. In last week's report, I criticized him for being too indulgent with the Iranians and not staying on message with the rest of the Trump administration. Apparently, this was all just part of a big fake-out campaign to make the Iranians drop their guard and give the U.S. military the time they needed to get everything into position, so that they'd be ready to spring into action when the order was given. The strikes have been planned for weeks, but according to reports that emerged on Sunday morning, the exact timing was actually moved up a bit because the Signals Intelligence Unit of the CIA picked up on something. A meeting was being planned at the compound of Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, which would be presided over by the Ayatollah himself, but also include dozens of senior security chiefs, generals of the IRGC, and the regular military intelligence chiefs, and so on. This meeting, bringing all these guys together in one place, presented an opportunity which simply couldn't be missed. And so on Saturday morning, the Israeli Air Force took off to go strike it, which they did with no less than 40 missiles, leaving the entire compound demolished and the leadership of the Islamic Republic annihilated. In the days since then, other senior leaders have also been taken out, some in airstrikes, others in assassinations which appear to have been carried out by agents on the ground. We've known for years that the Mossad and the CIA are very active on the ground in Iran, and there are also reports that IDF Special Operations Units, and we can assume U.S. Special Ops teams as well, have been operating on the ground in this current conflict. There usually isn't any reporting on these kinds of operations in the media, and to be candid, we'll be lucky if our grandchildren will have a chance to read about it in history books 50 years from now. But we should also remember that Iran and its proxy Hezbollah have people on the ground in the United States and Europe as well, often acting in cooperation with criminal syndicates and street gangs. Two can play this game, friends, so wherever you're watching this, I urge you to keep your physical and spiritual eyes and ears open. The Bible tells us that this world will become a very dangerous place in the latter days, and it doesn't say some countries will be safe because they're far away from the Middle East. There are many other simmering conflicts all over the world, between nation-states, criminal gangs, terrorist groups, and more. That's exactly what's written about in Matthew chapter 24. Now, this is a good place for me to remind you that Vision for Israel has been providing bomb safety shelters to communities all over Israel for several years now. That effort accelerated when this war broke out, but it didn't stop when the ceasefire began in Gaza last October. Donations to this project did slow down, and I don't blame anyone for that, but we haven't stopped this project because we knew that these shelters would still be needed. We're also still providing support to emergency response teams, firefighters, and even the police. So please watch this short video to see how you can be a part, together with us at Vision for Israel, to bless Israel. Vision for Israel has been installing bomb safety shelters since actually around the fall of 2021. During that year, there was a barrage of rockets that came into southern Israel, particularly by the terrorist group known as Hamas, and Israel had to find a way further in order to protect its citizens, its residents across the southern part of Israel. And so we sprung into action. We felt like this was a project that we had a personal invitation to fulfill. And it's important because when these projectiles, these missiles, these rockets, whatever that is that's thrown at Israel by its enemies, there is not only the potential for somebody being killed instantly, but also there's tremendous collateral damage and people that get wounded even from shrapnel. And so if you place a safety shelter at a bus stop, or in front of a high school or community center or a kindergarten or any kind of facility that's publicly accessible, the people can run into these shelters. The children can run and find safety in them and be protected from a rocket that lands and shrapnel is scattered, which could be mortally wounding people. So it gives not only a physical protection of security, but also an emotional sense of security that having a shelter that you can run to in the street, outside of a store, somewhere publicly accessible, not just in someone's home, but out in the open, gives a sense of security. And I always believe that it's important for us to refer to Scripture. In Psalm 91, the whole chapter talks about God providing us a shelter. And we have seen amazing deliverances from enemy rockets as a result. And now we've installed over 400 shelters across the southern and northern borders of Israel. And they weigh 30,000 kilos each, or that's 30 tons. And it's a lot of weight and rebar and concrete that's been specially mixed, and also with a special metal ramp that allows physically impaired people to be able to come up in a walker or a wheelchair on a moment's notice. In many of these areas, residents don't have any longer than between 5 seconds to maximum 45 seconds to get into a shelter to be protected. Welcome back, friends. Now, I can't give you an up-to-the-minute report about everything that's been happening because this is all moving very quickly and several major events happen every day. So by the time you're seeing the news about all these things going on, it's likely that there will have been even more changes. But let's just take a quick look at some of the most earth-shattering developments in the initial stages of the conflict. Once again, we should remember that this war started in 1979 when the U.S. Embassy in Tehran was taken over by agents of the Islamic Revolution, and American staff members were held hostage for 444 days. Former Iranian President Mahmoud Ahmadinejad, who's Ahmed out of a job, was one of those agents who took a direct part in that incident. And by the way, and reports indicate that an American missile caught up with him this past week, so he got his due, a bit late, but better late than never. Now, with that in mind, let's continue. In Israel, the war is being called Operation Roaring Lion, which is a riff on the Operation Rising Lion, which is what we called the 12-day war last June. I love these guys who name these operations. The U.S. is calling this operation Epic Fury, which I guess is a reference to the fact that, as President Trump has articulated, America put up with Iran's nonsense for a very long time. But patience has finally run out, and it's time to take care of business. Let me know in the comments section what you think of these names. So far, Israel has been hitting targets in western Iran, and American aircraft and sea-launched cruise missiles have been hitting targets in eastern and southern Iran. This has included ballistic missile launchers and silos, storage facilities, and production infrastructure, as well as what's left of the air defense network. B-1 and B-2 strategic bombers have also flown all the way from the continental United States to hit targets, including parts of the ballistic missile array that were in bunkers deep underground, which couldn't be reached by the munitions smaller aircraft carry. President Trump said last Monday that the campaign was way ahead of schedule, but he estimated that it would take another 4 weeks to complete all the objectives. Now, to switch briefly to commentary mode, I have to say that this timeline seems either wildly optimistic or overblown to me. It might be that the president is overstating the amount of time he thinks it'll take to destroy all these strategic targets inside Iran, giving himself a little cushion in case things go sideways. Or he might be just throwing out a number and it'll end up taking significantly longer than 4 weeks. Either possibility is equally likely to turn out from where I'm sitting. I've been around long enough to see many wars, and I've even participated in a few, and I know how tough it can be to predict how it'll go. That having been said, there's one thing we can predict, and that's suffering and casualties. That's a great place to leave commentary mode and tell you about the situation on Israel's home front. Iran has retaliated to the Israeli strikes by firing ballistic missiles and drones at Israeli cities. We knew that would happen, and that's why, as I said before, Vision for Israel has been placing bomb safety shelters all over the country. But there's still many people who don't have a shelter, so that work needs to continue on. Past Sunday, we were reminded that sometimes even having a shelter isn't enough, as an Iranian missile carrying a 500-kilogram warhead scored a direct hit on a synagogue in the city of Beit Shemesh near Jerusalem. This resulted in the complete destruction of the synagogue and several nearby buildings, and it also resulted in 9 fatalities, including some people who were sheltering in the safe room underneath the synagogue. According to media reports, the warhead detonated right on top of this shelter, and when that happens, even reinforced concrete can be penetrated. But people who were in other shelters just a few meters away were not harmed, so anyone who tells you that shelters don't work is totally wrong. There were additional casualties from a missile that managed to land in Tel Aviv the previous day, and there have also been casualties when people were hit by falling debris from missiles that were intercepted. Overall, Magen David Adom, whom Vision for Israel has also provided ambulances for, which is Israel's medical first response team, has reported treating nearly 1,000 people for injuries, most of them not life-threatening since this war began. Now, a handful of people have also been hurt when they fell while rushing to enter a protected space, and one elderly man died of a heart attack during an alert. My sympathies to the family. Many people are anxious and very stressed out at this time. It's a very scary situation, and I hate to even think about how many children are being traumatized by all this. In the years ahead, we're probably going to need to provide lots of mental health counseling to these children, but before that, we're going to have to provide it to tens of thousands of IDF soldiers who have already been diagnosed with PTSD. Now, that's a good place to mention that over 100,000 IDF reservists have once again been mobilized to deal with this emergency. On Monday, Hezbollah made the very foolish mistake of joining the war by firing rockets into Israel, prompting the IDF to step up its airstrikes on that group. There is already a ground incursion taking place by the IDF to wipe out Hezbollah for good. Now, the internationally recognized government of Lebanon had strongly warned Hezbollah against dragging the country into this war, but in the end, the demands of what's left of the Ayatollah regime in Iran drowned out the voice of the Lebanese people. No one should be surprised by any of this. It does make me sad because I visited Lebanon once before in the past, and it is a beautiful country that deserves much better. I hope it can recover quickly from this war and sign a normalization agreement with Israel so we can cooperate in the future. There's no reason not to. Now, getting back to the growing, but at this point still slow-moving mental health crisis in Israel, it's linked to other issues in addition to the incoming missiles and drones. It also includes the stress many families are having over their financial situation, the fear of displacement, and the generally chaotic situation in the country after 2.5 years of war. Here at Vision for Israel, we're doing everything we can to help alleviate the stress so many families are feeling. We're providing direct financial support to families in distress, assistance with food and other household needs, counseling services, school supplies, and much more. So please watch this short video. Go to our website at visionforisrael.com and write me if you'd like to at info@visionforisrael.com and see how you can bless the people of Israel. We all know that since October 7th, 2023, Israel has faced really tremendous challenges, not only because of the death and destruction that happened along the southern border of Israel in many of our communities, but also across the northern border, to where at one point we had over 100,000 Israeli residents and citizens, both Jews and Arabs alike, who had to evacuate their homes. So it's been a very multi-layered challenge in order to meet the needs of the people of Israel. And that's where Vision for Israel has come to the forefront, networking together across the country with as many others as possible in order to meet the needs of people. And this is all from both security concerns to safety concerns to welfare concerns to even to the children who have lost their education and schooling. Welcome back. Now, Israel is not the only country Iran is attacking at this time. The regime spent February making fiery threats about how, if they were attacked, it would lead to a regional conflict. Analysts said they were trying to influence their neighbors, especially Saudi Arabia and the UAE, to pressure the Americans to back off from an attack. And indeed, these countries declared that they would not allow their airspace or bases to be used in an operation against Iran. But despite all that, Iran responded to the American and Israeli strikes by launching hundreds of short and medium-range missiles, cruise missiles, and drones at the territory of its neighbors. The regime said they were aiming for U.S. bases in these countries, and indeed some damage to some of these facilities has occurred, but most of the damage has been to civilian infrastructure, including hotels in Dubai and Bahrain, civilian residential neighborhoods in Kuwait, an airport in Dubai, oil infrastructure in Saudi Arabia, and everything you can imagine in Qatar. Even Oman, which has gone out of its way to try and facilitate negotiations between Iran and the U.S., has been hit by Iranian weapons in this conflict. The galactic stupidity of this move is almost beyond comprehension. These Arab countries very much wanted to try and accommodate Iran, and were doing exactly what Iran wanted them to do, which is put pressure on America to not attack Iran. But now, after being hit by Iranian weapons, they're giving their full-throated support to America and in some cases getting ready to join in the attack on Iran themselves. One standout in this picture is Qatar, which has surprised everyone, probably including myself, by shooting down 2 attacking Iranian bombers and several incoming missiles. This happened, by the way, on the same day that Kuwait shot down 3 American F-15s, either by accident or because someone forgot whose side they were supposed to be on. Further afield, NATO has also been a pleasant surprise in this situation, giving strong support to the American attack, and even Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney issued a statement blaming Iran for the situation and emphasizing that Israel has a right to defend itself. Now, Carney hasn't made a lot of moves that I was impressed by since coming into office last year, but this time he hit the nail right between the eyes, and he deserves our thanks. So thank you, Canada. China and Russia also deserve our thanks for not interfering so far. Who knows if that will last, but at this point, I think it's possible that Moscow and Beijing simply have no idea what to do and few tools to do anything they might think of later. Meanwhile, the British have said they are deploying warships to the eastern Mediterranean to defend their bases in Cyprus, which have also been targeted by Iranian drones. Also, a decision not to allow American aircraft to use British military bases for operations against Iran appears to have been reversed. Other European countries have said they are considering joining in the military effort against Iran, probably in a defensive mode at first, but perhaps taking a more proactive, offensive role in the future. The regime has reacted indignantly to these announcements, informing the Europeans that this would be considered an act of war, which they'd make the Europeans regret taking. Well, friends, to switch to commentary mode, I've said for years that Iran's regime lies to everyone, but especially itself. They have now talked themselves into believing their own fairy tales, meant for their enemies, about how invincible they are. They've gone so far down this path that they've forgotten that everyone else can see it isn't true. In Israel, we don't talk much in public about how powerful our military and intelligence apparatus is. We let our actions do the talking. But for some reason, our enemies never seem to get the message. There are glimmers that some changes are coming, especially in the Abrahamic Accords countries and now also in Lebanon. However, before Lebanon's internationally recognized government in Beirut can join the Abraham Accords, Iran's proxy in Lebanon, the terror militia Hezbollah, must be completely demolished. The experiment to let it continue to exist only as a political party in Lebanon's parliamentary system has failed. On Monday, they did Israel a favor and fired 3 rockets into the Galilee, giving the IDF the pretext to start pounding them from the air in earnest and begin the process of sending a ground force into Lebanon to finish them off for good this time. Speaking of finishing things off, the list of names of senior Iranian regime officials who have been eliminated this week is astounding. It started, of course, with that first strike which took out Khamenei and at least 40 of his senior henchmen, but it has also continued on. Guys who were supposed to take the place of those who have already been assassinated are themselves being taken down before they even learn how to pronounce their names. I'm not saying that to be funny, it's the literal truth. I have a hard time learning these names, but I'll do my best as I continue reporting to you on these stories. Speaking of which, the regime says it's replaced Khamenei with what they've called an interim leadership council. It includes Masoud Pezeshkian, the president of Iran, who is considered a relative moderate and a reformist, along with Gholam Hossein Mohsen whatever his name is, Chief Justice of Iran, and Ayatollah Ali Reza Arafi, a senior cleric and jurist, as well as being a member of the Guardian Council and the Assembly of Experts. The Guardian Council is composed of 88 senior Shiite clerics, and they have a tremendous amount of influence on the decisions that get made. Well, right now, they are supposedly trying to pick a new supreme leader, and there are several candidates. I don't know why any of them would want to be. We don't know how much about who those candidates are, but we do know that some of those who should be on this list have already departed this earth, while others might still be alive, but they haven't been seen in public for a while, so we can't be sure who's around. I won't say more about this for now because, candidly, I don't know. And I don't think there's any sources of information about this story that we can really trust at this point. What's going on inside Iran right now is very difficult to even make any educated guesses about. And if you see anyone on TV saying they know for sure, you shouldn't take them too seriously. Another thing we're not sure about how seriously we should take is the threats by the IRGC to close the Strait of Hormuz. This is the narrow and shallow body of water connecting the Persian Gulf to the Indian Ocean. Through it, around 20% of global oil shipments pass every 24 hours, and a large percentage of the world's supply of liquefied natural gas also flows through it. Even without formally closing it, the IRGC's actions have already caused a severe disruption to these shipments, and energy futures have risen sharply as a result. This will have an impact on the global economy, and every single person walking the Earth's surface will feel the effect. We can't ignore this, and it's a very good reason for everyone to want this war to end as quickly as possible. What's left of Iran's regime isn't showing any signs of appreciating how hopeless their situation is and surrendering. And the ordinary people in Iran don't appear to be ready to rise up and overthrow this regime yet either. These are the two main exit ramps that I see being available, because President Trump isn't going to back down, and Israel is not going to back down until this regime is over. On that note, let us pause for a moment and take note of the fact that Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has been shouting from the rooftops about the threat from Iran for decades. He has continued moving heaven and earth to remain Prime Minister of this country for as long as he has, because he believed that he had been born to lead us in this battle against the Islamic Republic of Iran. Other issues have also defined his time in office, but none of them came close to being as important to him as Iran. Now, less than a year before the legally mandated end of this current Knesset term, which will end with elections he might very well not win, he's seeing this kinetic battle against the Ayatollah regime finally happening. As I've said many times, I never claim to be a prophet, but right here, right now, I'm going to make a few predictions. First, President Trump will end up being right about this war to depose the Ayatollah regime in Iran, not taking more than 4 weeks. The IDF's war to finally annihilate Hezbollah in Lebanon certainly won't take that long, even though most of the long-range air power is being devoted to the campaign in Iran. The Houthis in Yemen, who are mysteriously taking a long time to enter this conflict, will wither without Iranian support. We might even see them weakening to a point where other factions in Yemen, with support from Saudi Arabia and the UAE, are able to take control of the country from them. Similarly, without Iranian support, Hamas in Gaza will be deposed by local Palestinian militias and factions that have support from Israel, the United States, and moderate Arab countries, including Egypt and Jordan. When this conflict with Iran ends, we might also see Netanyahu finally retiring from politics and not running in the next Knesset elections. However, I also predict that Turkey and the Muslim Brotherhood will take the opportunity to pick up the pieces of Iran's shattered axis of resistance, and they'll be Israel's next biggest problem. Go read Ezekiel chapters 38 to 39, friends. We're getting very close to the events described in those chapters. Now we're out of time for this report, but I want to continue the tradition of ending with some good news. And this week, the Israeli stock market has rallied despite the war with Iran, and Israel's economic future is, in general, very bright. So with that, I'm Barry Segal, and this has been another edition of VFI News from Israel. Continue to pray for all of us in Israel and for the peace of Jerusalem. Shalom, shalom.